Folks, God's prophetic clock was pre-wound to tick for 6,000 years. And we're right now living in the final hours of the end times. I wrote a book, a little booklet. We did a show on it last week. This is part 2. Time is running out. And my friend, let me tell you, time is running out. And a little 36-page booklet about time. What is time? When did time begin? Is there time in heaven? Where does Satan fit in all this? All this is discussed in this little booklet. And also, much of it we talked about last week in the program. And if you didn't see that, I would encourage you to go to our website, prophecyinthespotlight.com, and find the YouTube channel is right there. All you do is click on it. And you're looking for, I think it's show number 101, I think. Is that right, Mr. Goodwin?
Today is 2.
All right, today is 102. So 101 would be the one we did part 1, okay? So show 101 on YouTube, if you missed it, you can go to our website and find the YouTube channel. If you don't get YouTube and you're only television only and you want to contact the ministry here, I believe we offer DVDs of the shows. And you could get it that way. But we're going to continue, and I've got Doc in the studio. We're going to continue, going to review just a little bit, and then we're going to bring Doc in on this, and we're going to talk about what does Satan have to do with all this. You're going to be a little bit surprised, so stay tuned. And welcome everybody, Prophecy in the Spotlight here. I'm your host, Brother Dan Goodwin, and guess who's back this week? Dr. Charles Hiltibidal is back from the dark side or wherever you've been. But no, we did a show without you to introduce the booklet here, and but we're doing a part 2, and you're gonna have a big part in this. Let's just review just a little. The booklet's about time. Time has been a mystery for decades and eons, and we still don't.
It depends on who you talk to as to what it might be.
We still don't understand much about it. You can't comprehend it. No. God created this thing that we live in. We call it the universe. See, it's not just the earth, it's the galaxies, it's as far as you can see and beyond. The universe, it's time. We're under the confines of time and space here.
But verse number 1 of our Bible is it is a time, space, matter continuum that God creates.
In the beginning, God created. In the beginning, God. He's not talking about the beginning of God. He's not talking about the beginning of
beginning of all of creation and all of time.
He's talking about the beginning of this thing that we live in here, this universe, and the creation story. And I believe, and you agree with me, I'm sure, this is a 7,000-year period.
It certainly appears to be.
And of course, 1,000 years on the end is the kingdom age. We're not there yet.
So we're about to the end of the 6,000th year, and the millennial reign's 7. So.
And what does that mean? That means time is running out.
Yes.
She's got some slides she'll put up there about that, but time is running out. We're at the end of this thing, Doc.
We are.
And there you go. And by the way, there's what the book looks like. I realized I wrote a tract that looks just like that. We're using the print that I have in my office. We're using that same tract print for the book cover because that's what it's about. It's about time. And
it is running out.
Yeah, and last week we talked about what time is. I gave some definitions. It's basically the definition of time in every dictionary I looked at was past. It's the duration of past, present, and future. Everyone had the same kind of outlook on that.
Well, if you were a scientist, you'd say, well, it's measured by light rays.
Yeah, I'm not a scientist.
That's why the first thing you find God creates is light. So, anyway, yes.
And we talked about Einstein a little bit, his theory of relativity, which I couldn't explain 20 seconds of that theory, but I do know this. He was getting at, he believed it was possible to travel through time.
Yes.
And I gave, I think, several illustrations. I didn't give them all, but I think there's 8 illustrations in the booklet of time travel in the Bible.
Yeah.
Listen, we're not talking about fairy tales here or sci-fi. We're talking about biblical things. Matthew 17, the Transfiguration. There's 2 guys that came from the past and showed up. By the way, they weren't from the same past. They weren't from the same era, those 2 guys. Moses was long before Elijah.
Right.
A few thousand years, I think.
Well, one of these days when we get to heaven, we'll understand, because we'll have the mind of Christ then. But till then, we don't understand it all.
And so they show up, and how did they get there? And I explained this last week. They came through a portal. Talk about sci-fi. But it's not sci-fi, because the Bible doesn't use the word portal. That's the sci-fi crowd that uses that. I'm not saying it's a bad word. There's nothing wrong with it. It's simply a door. The Bible uses the word door.
Door opened into heaven.
Revelation 4:1, behold, a door was opened in heaven.
And almost all these instances you're speaking of are also in relationship with a mountaintop.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yes.
Boy, that could be a Hollywood movie right there. Different mountains you go to transport to somewhere. And, of course, you got Star Trek and all that stuff back in the late 60s. And I told them last week, a lot of the sci-fi stuff, although it's fiction and it's way out there, it has some foundational things built upon truth.
It wouldn't be of any value if it didn't have some truth in it. And people need to understand the satanic world is the one that's behind all of Hollywood. And if you've not figured this out yet, I'm sure you have. But the things that they used to put out with sci-fi, we're seeing that in real life today.
Yeah.
How'd that happen?
Yeah. So we talked about dimensions. There were several dimensions. Hell is a dimension. You can't just dig a hole and find hell, because it's not there. It's not in the ground. It's not physical. Heaven, you can't fly a plane to heaven. Paul said, God is not far from every one of us.
Every one of us. Yeah.
It's a dimension.
It's a dimension.
And I realize that sounds like sci-fi stuff, but it's not. It's sci-fi people have taken some biblical truths and twisted them a little bit.
And science has even been able to figure out at least 4 different dimensions. So yes.
And then that brings us to something I didn't spend much time on, and I think Mrs. Goodwin. Oh, I need to read this verse, don't I? Put that up, Mr. Goodwin. And not sure I have that verse handy here. And I don't think I can read that from here. But you can see the verse down the bottom. Is just the phrase at the bottom is what I want you to see. That there should be time no longer. There's coming a day, Doc, when time's
going to end. Yeah.
And I think that's after the kingdom age, after the 7,000th year.
It certainly is after the end of it, because it's when this world melts in fervent heat and God makes a new heaven and a new earth. Yeah. And there'll be no more time.
And it'll be back to eternal things.
Because we'll no longer have the need of the light of the sun or the moon, because Jesus will be the light thereof. And so, yes.
So time is going to end one day after the Battle of Armageddon.
Yes.
Well, actually, beyond that, 1,000 years beyond that, after that final battle.
A final battle. Many of the same players are mentioned there. That's why a lot of people get that confused. But yes.
Okay. Well, that brings us to something I touched on last week, but not too deeply, and that's CERN. So we're going to show the audience what this thing is. This is over in Switzerland, and. In recent years, let me just read what's in the book here. In recent years, man has been trying to break into these other dimensions. They may not realize that's what they're doing, but they're trying to do that. There is a huge superconductor in Switzerland, and they call it CERN, C-E-R-N. There's a picture of it on the screen. That's just part of it. This thing's huge. This thing has wires and conductors and diodes and miles and miles of tunnels, and they're using electric current and magnetism. I don't even understand it all. But
they're racing electrons against each other.
Yeah, some race, huh?
Yeah.
And the people at CERN claim to be trying to find what holds the atoms together.
Yep, that's what their goal is.
And they call it the God particle, because inside an atom is a neutron and a proton.
And they wonder how that all can stay.
Centrifugal force. It should come apart, but it doesn't. And they know that something's holding it together.
God factor, and I can introduce them to the God that put the factor together.
That's right. It's God that holds this thing together.
By Him do all things consist.
But they're trying to figure this out, and even some big name scientists say they're messing with something they shouldn't be messing with. Yeah. And they believe that this could open up a black hole. They believe it could open up another dimension. You know, they're not Bible believers, so
Well, they're evolutionists to begin with, because a born-again scientist already understands who holds it all together.
And the symbol of CERN.
Yes.
She's going to put that up. This is unbelievable.
Yeah.
Now look at that. Now I wrote 666 there for you, but if I hadn't written that, I think you could still see that it's very plain.
Very plain to see.
When you look at that symbol, there's 3 6s there.
But that's not any different than the same type of loop that Google uses. The 666 we talked about.
You talked about
a couple of weeks ago.
The code, the barcodes have 666. They all have it.
But Google's 3 different colors that go to the exact same thing as that.
Yeah.
666. Hey, it's everywhere in the world. The devil's got his mark on this world. He runs it.
All right. Well, that brings us to our final segment here that I didn't get to last time because I wanted to bring you in. In the book, I have a segment called The Mystery of Satan Throughout Time. So the Bible tells us about the fall of Satan, and I'm going to have you deal with this. In Isaiah 14 and Ezekiel 28 and Revelation 12, those 3 passages.
Most people don't realize Revelation 12 is alluding to that, yes.
Yeah. In fact, Revelation 12 covers 6,000 years of human history.
Before time and
but it covers before time and into creation and all that.
Yes.
Because it's a parenthetical passage.
It is a parenthetical.
The Bible tells us about the fall of Satan. It's understood by most people that Satan or Lucifer led 1/3 of the angels in rebellion against God before. And I don't even know if that's accurate.
Right.
Because there's no time. How can it be before or after?
Well,
it's outside of time that this rebellion took place.
From the reference point of time, it would be before.
All right, so Satan is not created in Genesis, and we know that.
No.
I don't know how many prophecy preachers I hear on television trying to put a place in Genesis for the creation of the angels, and it's not there.
They're not. It's obvious that God already had His realm in eternity past from the reference point of time, and it is during that era that Lucifer, and by the way, Lucifer and Satan are one and the same people, and he rose in rebellion because of the pride in his heart, and he wanted to be above God, he wanted to be equal to God, and all these kind of things, and as a result, he motivated a third part of heaven's host, and they're called fallen angels today rather than holy angels. And so that, I'm convinced, is prior to Genesis chapter number 1.
So why don't where do you want us to? Do you want to read Isaiah, or do you want to share Isaiah first and then Ezekiel?
Yeah.
We don't want to take too much time.
No, he said in verse 12, chapter 14 of Isaiah, "How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations? For thou hast said in thine heart, I will ascend into heaven, I will exalt my throne above the stars of God." I think that's talking about probably the angels. "And I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north." That's also often a reference to the throne room of heaven. And so it's obvious from Isaiah. Of course, we need to understand the context here in Isaiah 14 is a judgment against Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon. And in that, he then brings Nebuchadnezzar's pride, and he uses the story as a comparison of it, and that's why some people can easily get misled there, not understanding that it's used as a comparison, because the Bible doesn't give us direct information about that particular fall, other than it's a pride factor. and he wanted to be equal or above God.
And he's showing Nebuchadnezzar that he's commit the same sin that Satan committed at the beginning.
This is what happened to Satan in the past, and of course we know the story of Nebuchadnezzar. In the book of Ezekiel, chapter 28, there it's talking about the prophecy against another king, the king of Tyre. And God does a very similar thing, or the Holy Spirit, under the leadership of the Holy Spirit, has brought it into the text. And the same similar thing has happened to that king. And there we find some other information very similar to this concerning the fall of Lucifer.
But just listen, and you read this a moment ago. How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which did weaken the nations? And here's his sin. For thou hast said, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God, or above the other angels. And I will sit upon the mount of the congregation, the sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. There's the sin of sin.
That's it.
I'm going to be like God. He didn't say I'm going to be over God. I'm going to be like God.
So in that context, it's very similar, because this was the idea that Nebuchadnezzar had. He's walked out on the veranda and he's thumbed himself and said, look what I have, man, I'm God. And so this is where...
Now this is right before, and God, this is where he goes out, God judging, he's out eating grass, remember? God says, you think you're God, I'll tell you what.
And it's amazing.
Took his mind away.
But it's amazing there, it's a 7-year period of time. And he comes back again, and he recognizes God, and the tribulation being said. Anyway,
boy, there's a lot of things,
a lot of parallels there, and but in the text, it's really a judgment of 2 different kings, and brought into the conversation is an insight of comparison of the fall of Satan, or Lucifer, and it all revolves around pride, and that's why you find a lot, particularly the book of Proverbs and other places, the sin of pride. And that's plagued man for ever since.
And then the creation story happens. And and Satan shows up in the garden.
Well, here's the thing. You see, after this, God's going to create man in his image. The whole purpose of this creation was to have a utopian world, and that's the first week of creation explains how the utopian world was designed, and how that man, even after his sin, lived about 1,000 years in that utopian world. And so, but on day number 6, God makes man in his image. The devil has already lost a war with God, and a third part of heaven's host now are unholy angels. He hates God. He's going to do everything he can to come against God. So what's he going to do? He's going to come into the realm of what we would call time now, and into the Garden of Eden, and he's going to come and tempt man, made in the image of God, to do the very same thing that he done. Hey, wouldn't you like to know, wouldn't you like to be able to make your own mind up? Wouldn't you like to know, like God does, what's right and wrong?
Isn't it like a kid at school who got caught doing wrong? So he wants to get his friends to do it too, so he don't look so bad.
But it's all about getting at God, and man's made in the image of God.
Now he hates man, but there's something he hates more than us.
He hates God.
He hates God with a passion.
And man is nothing but a tool to him to get back at God.
And so he comes in the garden, he gets Eve, tempts her with the same thing.
Tempts her with the same thing.
As God.
It's all about pride. Wouldn't you like to be in charge of your own life? Wouldn't you like to do your own thing?
A God is something that determines for you what is right and what is wrong. And that's what he told Eve. The woman's lib movement was born right there.
We don't know how long they were.
Couldn't have been too long, because there's no children born.
There's no children involved, so there's none of that. And we understand God established cycles, and all of the cycles in science is on 7. And so there's no children conceived. And so I don't think the devil waited long to come to tempt Adam and Eve, because he wanted to come against God. He wants to get man to do the same thing against God he's done.
Now Eve sinned. She was deceived. The Bible says in Timothy.
The Bible is clear.
Still guilty, but she was deceived.
Guilty.
She was tricked. Adam, it's very plain. Adam was not deceived. He willfully sinned. There's a beautiful story there.
There is, and then when you read the original text in Genesis chapter 3, you realize Adam was right there with her.
Yeah.
He should have stepped in, but anyway.
But I think she sinned.
Yes.
And he sinned. I think he sinned to save her.
Sinned. Yeah.
I think that's why Christ is called the second Adam.
That's why he's called this. It's part of the reason. The main reason he's called the last Adam is or the second Adam, whatever you want to call it. But the reason he's called that is because he's going to correct what the first one made a problem with.
Yeah.
That's what.
But there is a beautiful love story. Jesus died to save his bride. Adam also died to save his bride. Yeah, beautiful story.
A lot of wonderful story in that. But yes, so the devil, he's lost his position as a holy angel. He's now an unholy angel, and he's mad at God. He didn't get what he wanted. Hey, when a man's in pride and he doesn't get what he wants, he's going to double down.
Well, Doc, be ready for Ezekiel. We'll end with that, but let's just take a moment. We are at the last final weeks before we have to pay our TV bill and our radio bill. We're on CTN. We're also on VTN in Arkansas on cable every Saturday at 12:30. We're on CTN, of course, at 7 o'clock Eastern. Across the nation on Fridays, and our bill has come due, and it's huge, and we are not there yet.
No,
we're at the end, just a few weeks, maybe a week or two to go, and we got to pay our bill, and we're still short several $1,000s, and so we need some of you out there to partner with us and to help us.
Yes.
You can go straight to the website, hit the donate button. You can take care of it right there, or you can call the 800 number. You can donate over the phone, or you can tell the lady. Tell my daughter that answers the phone you'd like to talk to me or Doc about supporting or partnering with us. We'd be glad to talk. We'd love to talk to you about that and tell you our vision and what we want to do here. And so you can do that, or you can send a check in the mail. The address is right there on the website. So many ways to get a hold of us. We need your help. If you like what you see here and you believe this is important, we need you to help us. We want you to pray about partnering with us, okay? One more thing. My wife will put that up there. We have a special donation package if you'd like to donate, but you'd like to get something for that. We have my 2 DVD set. These are PowerPoint presentations. There are 4 sessions on each one of these DVDs. There's 2 sets now. There's 2 DVDs in each one of these, so it's 4 DVDs. It's each session is like 45 minutes, so there's like 90 minutes on each one, on each disc. So there's 4 discs. This is PowerPoint stuff. This is stuff I use at my conferences. So for a gift of $50 or more, we're going to send these free of charge to you, okay? All right, Doc, let's get back here to
Ezekiel 28.
Let's go to Ezekiel 28.
Yes. Well, it's a lamentation, or it's a judgment against the king of Tyrus. And he said in verse 13, it says, "Thou hast been in Eden, the garden of God." Well, he's not talking about the king himself, because the king wasn't in. So this is, once again, like over in Isaiah, bringing a comparison of the sin of pride in the king of Tyre in relationship to.
So here's a little glimpse God is giving us.
A little glimpse
of Satan
given to us.
Way back in the Garden of Eden. So go ahead.
So he says, "Thou hast been in Eden, the garden of God. Every precious stone was thy covering, and sardius, topaz, and diamond, beryl, onyx, the jasper, sapphire, emerald, cumberine." He goes on, he talks about the things, and then he says this, "The workmanship of thy tabrets and of thy pipes was created in thee in the day that thou wast created." You see, the devil had a point of origin too.
That's right.
He was created.
But not in our time.
But not created in the week of creation.
Right.
He was created just like all the rest of the angels. God brought them into existence. They're eternal spirits, and by the way, we're eternal. When God breathed in the nostrils of Adam, Adam became a living or forever alive soul. And so we are eternal. And so he goes on, then he says, "And thou art the anointed cherub that covereth." In other words, he would have been the top cherub. "And I have set thee so. Thou wast upon the holy mountain of God." I think that's talking about the throne room of heaven and the things there. "And thou walkest upon and down in the midst of the stones of fire." I think that's in reference to the angels. "Thou wast perfect in thy ways from the day that thou wast created, till iniquity was found in thee." And that iniquity, we know, was the pride factor.
Him wanting to ascend into heaven, wanting to be like God.
Wanting to be like God.
In other words, God's on his throne, Satan wanted to have his own throne.
It's no different today. You've got leaders in the world, they'd like to lead the world. That's what the Antichrist. So that brings us to that.
Okay, and he takes 1/3 of the angels. Let me read Revelation 12 real quickly, verse 3 and 4. There appeared another wonder in heaven. Behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns upon his heads, and his tail, this is talking about Satan, his tail drew the 1/3 part of the stars of heaven and did cast them to the earth.
Yes.
So that's interesting right there. And the dragon stood before the woman, that's Israel, which was ready to be delivered for to devour her child as soon as it was born. Boy, there's a lot of things to think on.
So what that does is help us understand that there was a time, before time, that there was a war in heaven, and 1/3 of heaven's host has fallen. They've been cast to the ground. Now in creation, the sin is brought into the world, and God's plan in Genesis chapter 3:15 is that a woman is going to have the seed of the woman. That's talking about Israel providing a body for the Messiah.
Yeah.
And so chapter 12 brings you from what we would say eternity before time, into time, through time, and why now at the middle of the tribulation why is the world all of a sudden, the world turned against us and all of Israel's running for their life to the mountains? They need to know. So it's a history lesson.
Yeah.
Bringing them from that time to where they are. Why the devil hates you, Israel, is because God used you to provide the body of Hebrews 11, chapter 10 and verse 5 for the purpose of Calvary's cross.
So this whole thing started before Adam was created.
Yes.
The war started, the real battles between God and Satan.
And it's still going on around us today.
And hell was not created for man. No. Hell was created for the devil and his angels. And when man sinned in Genesis,
we entered into that same judgment.
We got under the same judgment.
Yes.
But God sent us a Messiah to save us.
I tell folks, at the judgment of God on sin, he brought out of eternity past the plan of redemption and brought it into time. And he told us there that there'd be a woman in the future. Of course, that was talking about Israel. I know a lot of people think that's in a reference to the virgin birth. It's not later until...
It's kind of twofold there, really.
It's twofold in that name. But there it's a broader picture, and it's the picture that Revelation 12 you just read. Yeah. It's all about Israel providing the body for the Messiah, who accomplished what he came to, and there in the next verse you didn't read, but he ascends back into heaven again after he done what he came to do.
Yeah. Boy, what a story. And boy, it's so important to understand Satan's part in all this.
Yes.
And he hates God. He's out to destroy everything he can to hurt God. And he has a big part to play in the tribulation at the end time. And right there at the middle, what we just read is... well, Doc, thanks. You did a great job helping explain this. This is all in this little booklet, folks. Time is running out. I hope you go to the website and get that. And Doc, thanks for coming on and being with us again.
Yes.
And good stuff. And well, we're about out of time. I hope you know Jesus. I hope you know that Messiah that came and died for your sins. I hope you know him. I hope you're ready to meet him. I hope you're ready for that trumpet to sound. But until then, keep your eyes on them skies.